going to say it. When you see Joe Biden, that's his name, isn't it? Yes, sir. That's it. Joe Biden was talking to members of the Jewish community. Such a sycophant, you know. And he's saying to them, single-handedly, the Jewish people that are those that run Hollywood are singularly responsible for America's turn and acceptance of same-sex marriage. Biden said that. And I'm sure the Jewish people sitting there, they cringed. But he put the blame where it really belonged. Now, how can you tell me as a Jew you have a covenant relationship with Yahovah? And here the law that he forbids, you are pushing something that God disapproves of. Has that not damaged your relationship with the God and ruined your ability to say, I'm the chosen of God? Chosen to do what? See? So if good Jews don't stand up and say, this is wrong. You cannot call yourself a Jew and then violate the laws, statutes, and commandments of God and then lead others into doing evil. See, that is shaitan. They're not doing evil just themselves, but they're guiding others in the doing of evil. So men can love men freely now. Who will warn America? Come on. Women can love women freely now. Who will warn America?
Guys, this is Super Mike 2164. I wanted to read this story because I wanted to make sure that people didn't forget this, went down the memory hole 10 years ago. 10 years ago. And you know how people make 10-year plans. But 10 years ago, Joe Biden was speaking at an American Jewish Heritage Month Foundation reception. And, being stupid as he is, even though he was 10 years younger, his brain, you see how bumbling and idiotic he is like right now. His brain is pretty much mush. But, it was basically mush 10 years ago, too. And so this came out, but it's very tough to find a video. You can't hardly find a video. You can't hardly even find people referencing it, but they still have to put up the papers. They have to still put up media in talking about it, because what ends up happening is, us the truth tellers, fact finders, those who put facts behind the so-called theories of conspiracy. They know we're going to record and keep stuff, and we're going to find it, so they want to have stuff that combats what we say. So what I want to go right into this New York intelligent, sir. The national interest. See, this is May 22nd, 2013. Biden praises Jews. He was praising the Hollywood Jews. But they felt like it goes too far, accidentally thrills the anti-Semites. And keep in mind, these particular people are in the Hollywood ones that control Hollywood. This is by Jonathan Chat. So he's been there before he wrote this story 2 years. Joe Biden spoke last night. So that was May 22nd. It was May 21st. Joe Biden spoke last night in honor of Jewish American Heritage Month Biden has long, deep ties to Jewish community. Obama actually picked him in 2008 in part to reassure the skittish Jewish Democrats. Biden indeed offered fulsome, heartfelt praise in his remarks before wandering into highly uncomfortable terrain and delivering a speech that is likely to be quoted by anti-Semites for years and decades to come. It's already the subject of excited discussion among the white supremacist community. And just a side note, there's certain freaking idiots out there who believe just because you quote a fact, which is a truth, that somehow just because a white supremacist or a white nationalist or something quotes the same truth, that, oh, you're copying them. This is the dumbest slave thought process I've ever come across, but it's out there. The thing is, the truth is the truth is available to everyone. No one owns that. There's not a talking point on the truth. You can use the truth as a talking point, which is the best talking point. But, it's the same truth. The truth. Okay, these are facts. And just because a white supremacist says, or white nationalist, or whatever the hell, they're using the truth to try to support their particular argument. We don't deny the truth just because somebody that we may not agree with all the way repeats that truth. See, because the truth is from God. Okay, so this is the reason why we use discernment. We're using that truth to advance the agenda that we believe that is the righteous agenda. So let's keep going. So that's what they do. They try to say, oh, it's excited discussion among the white supremacist community. First of all, these Zionist Jews are white supremacists. Biden's remarks were not anti-Semitic. They were very, very philo-Semitic, loving the Jewish. The thrust of his largely unscripted monologue is that the Jews have contributed enormously to the United States. That's obviously a standard spiel for praising any ethnic group. But Biden took care to emphasize that the Jews have not just contributed their share to the United States, but far more. What have they contributed? Let's see. The Jewish people have contributed greatly to America. No group had such an outsized influence per capita as all of you standing before me. Okay, so all of you standing before you, and all of those who went before me, and all of those who went before you. You make up 11% of the seats in the United States Congress. Listen, guys. You make up 11% of all the seats in the United States Congress. You make up 1/3 of all Nobel laureates. I think you, as usual, underestimate the impact of Jewish heritage. I really mean that. I think you vastly underestimate the impact you've had on the development of this nation. It's obviously true that Jews have flourished in the United States and, as Biden says, have achieved massively disproportionate representation in fields like science, culture, politics, academia, and so on. Jews regard this fact with a mixture of pride and neurosis. The neurosis is a fear that our success will be seen as a kind of invidious control, that the broader society will at some point say, no, you have too much. Ivy League schools in the last century imposed first overt quotas and then more subtle geographic and character-based admission standards, precisely to suppress the disproportionate Jewish share of their student body. Now, how can they prove that? You see, that's a conspiracy theory, but, whatever. See, how can they prove that? The first generation of Hollywood moguls lived in terror, really. This is crazy. Anyway, let's keep reading. This is from their perspective. The first generation of Hollywood moguls, super rich, control, power, but they lived in terror that they would be seen as using their control of film to impose a particular Jewish slant upon the culture, and labored endlessly to dispel any such suspicions. That's why Birth of a Nation was their first blockbuster hit, because they wanted to show everybody that they hated black people too. And Woodrow Wilson showed it in the White House. So I don't know how terrified they were, but anyway. It's also true that while Jewish opinions run the ideological gamut, they have clustered heavily on the left end of the political spectrum. When you combine that fact with the fact of disproportionate Jewish representation in politics and culture, you have a weirdly shared belief among philo-Semites and anti-Semites as Biden proceeds to laud Jewish contribution to the American politics. You can see the audience go from cavilling to shavutim. Okay? And that's not a Hebrew language. That's Yiddish. So that's another reason why we call certain people Jewish. But the embrace of immigration is part of that, as is the involvement of Jews in the social justice movements. Now, they're talking about LGBT stuff because that's what Biden said. You can't talk about the civil rights movement in this country without talking about Jewish freedom riders. Really? Yeah, you can. And Jack Greenberg, he said, telling a story about seeing a group of Jewish activists at a segregated movie theater in Delaware. You can't talk about women's movement without talking about Betty Friedan. I believe what affects the movements in America, what affects our attitudes in America, are as much the culture and the arts as anything else, he said. That's why he spoke out on gay marriage. Apparently, a little ahead of time. See, a little ahead of time. They didn't want him to say this yet. It's too early. 10 years ago, it was too early for their plan. It wasn't anything we legislatively did. So notice there's power outside of legislating and voting. It was will and grace. It was the social media. Literally, that's what changed people's attitudes. That's why I was so certain that the vast majority of people would embrace and rapidly embrace gay marriage, Biden said. Think behind all of that. I bet you 85% of those changes, whether it's in Hollywood or social media, are a consequence of Jewish leaders in the industry. The influence is immense. The influence is immense. And I might add, it's all to the good. See, that's Biden's talk. They didn't want him to say this yet. I'm going to read that again. Think behind all of that. I bet you 85% of those changes, whether it's in Hollywood or social media, are a consequence of Jewish leaders in the industry. The influence is immense. The influence is immense. And I might add, it's all to the good. A sycophant. Biden's intentions here are obviously as friendly as can be, but the execution is awkward. The civil rights movement today is so widely sanctified that mentioning the disproportionate Jewish role in it is in the same category as mentioning Einstein, Jonas Salk, and so on. Look at all these wonderful things that Jews have helped bring us. Because Biden is liberal, it feels natural to segue into the Jewish role in the gay civil rights movement. And I share his belief that now I personally, Michael doesn't share this, but this is the writer, Jonathan, whatever. And I share his belief that popular culture has played an enormous and underappreciated role in promoting gay civil rights among liberal causes. Now, first of all, see, that lets black people know something. Civil rights is the Jewish control. The black power is not. Black power was really what we were going for. And then they created this civil rights using their folks. Civil rights. Malcolm X was not a civil rights leader. He was a Muslim. He was a human rights and a black power advocate because he wanted control for the black people, for their destiny. So, we need to understand the difference there. Also, and this is a small thing, when you're pulling numbers completely out of your ass, you should probably round them off to the tens digit rather than the fives. Jews are 85% responsible for changing cultural attitudes towards gays. 90% felt too high, 80% not high enough. The main problem here is that gay rights, unlike black civil rights, are politically controversial at the moment. Still they are. And the thing is, gay rights, no. Certain right, they don't have a certain rights, just like straight people don't have certain rights to teach certain sexual practices towards children. But when you roll your entire identity up into the way that you have sex, then you want to teach sex. But sex is not who you are. Sex is just a particular practice and a choice in how you combine with someone. Your gender is part of who you are. All right, so the main problem here is gay rights, unlike black civil rights, are politically controversial at the moment. Biden may find it all to the good that Jews have used their influence over popular culture to change societal attitudes towards homosexuality. But lots of people don't find it good at all. So that's what he wrote. And this is just a reaction to this thing the day later. All right, here's another story. So this is CTV News. And this is the day, Tuesday, May 21st, 2013. Biden praising Jewish leaders in Hollywood for changing attitudes on gay marriage. So U.S. Vice President Joe Biden speaks during the University of Pennsylvania 257th commencement Monday, May 13, 2013, in Philadelphia. Vice President Joe Biden was praising Jewish leaders for helping change American attitudes about gay marriage and other issues. Biden says cultural and arts change people's attitudes. He cites social media and the old NBC TV series Will and Grace as examples of what helped change attitudes on gay marriage. Biden says, quote, think behind all that. I bet you 85% of those changes, whether it's in Hollywood or social media, are a consequence of Jewish leaders in the industry. Biden says the influence is immense and that those changes have been for the good. Biden was speaking Tuesday night at Jewish Heritage Month reception hosted by the Democrat National Committee. He says Jewish values are an essential part of who Americans are.